thank you, whoever did that, I guess it's Katie, for a context of what foresight means. And then we're going to do a short exercise just for you to have an opportunity to reflect upon your project and how it aligns with what we're looking for. And then we'll open up to Q&A. Because there's quite a few of you today, what we're asking is for you to simply, as you have questions, to please add it to the chat, and we'll try to get to those throughout the session today, and especially during the Q&A session. Great. So, there you go. So just want to have my other two companions just to say hello and check in. So Katie, would you like to go?
Hi, thanks. Sorry, I was just writing to everyone. Hello, welcome. But I'll just say it. Hello, everyone, welcome. I'm Katie, I'm the NGFP project manager. Super happy to be here today. Over to you, Eddie.
Hi, my name is Eddie, Edward Wanyonyi. From Nairobi, Kenya. I've been a judge and happy to be here and to share some insights and also to listen from you to learn what your expectations are. So thank you.
Great. And for myself, I am the Foresight Learning Lead at NGFP. So I'm one of the members who helps people who are part of the fellowship and the network, help them support them on their Foresight learning journey. So this is why today we're, Eddie and I are going to talk a little bit about foresight within the NGFP. Eddie, you want to start us off just giving a little background about who we are?
Yeah, of course. Okay, so NGFP, the Next Generation Foresight Practitioners. So it's an initiative that was launched in 2018 to establish and connect people around the world who are using futures and foresight methods to create positive impact within community. So creating a better, fairer world based on a more positive view of the future. Over the past 5 years, our network has grown to almost 600 members, and we work across 90 countries. So our members come from all different geographies, areas of expertise, and walks of life. So from working with food systems in India to developing new technologies in Kenya to reshaping the future of elections in America to redesigning new interspecies friendly cities in Germany. So all with futures and foresight in the heart of what they do, or woven into the outcomes of the project. Next slide, please, Daniel.
Okay.
So the main way you can become part of the NGFP network is to apply to our fellowship, which is why I'm sure most people are here today, as you're hopefully already in the process of applying. So a quick overview of what's in it for you, how to apply if you're not quite there yet, and then I'll move to the eligibility criteria before we come on to framing your use of foresight. So in terms of what you receive, all fellows will receive a small amount of funding, at least $1,000 at the beginning of the project, potentially significantly upwards, and there will be a $10,000 prize fund at the end of the first year. You receive a dedicated mentor throughout the year, monthly connect meetings with your cohort, so for learning and peer-to-peer project support, access to our amazing Foresight 101 training course that Daniel led for the first time this year, opportunities to showcase your work within the community, and be part of thematic hubs. So existing hubs include things like the Climate Hub, Digital Futures Hub, Emerging Technology Hub. There are a whole range of different benefits. And how do you apply? So there's just one online application process where we ask you to complete a profile, answer 7 questions, written application, and then upload a video. Next slide, please, Daniel. And for the first time in 2023, as you can see here, we're highlighting 7 global challenge areas. So if your project aligns with one of these areas, there'll also be 2 additional questions as part of the application form. And if you join us as a global challenge fellow, there's a little bit more funding attached and a greater level of involvement with both NGFP and the School of International Futures. So that's the organization that the NGFP sits underneath. And you can see here just some key points around eligibility criteria as well. So to be eligible to apply, you need to be between 18 and 35 years old, or between 12 and 17 years if you're applying to our Young Voices Fellowship. If you're over 35, but you have less than 5 years experience working in foresight, we also welcome you to apply. Any sector or project focus is welcome, and each year we bring in approximately 20 to 30 fellows who are with us for the year-long journey. Applications close on the 2nd of June, so today is 10 days to go. So hopefully this session can inspire you and give you the information you need to complete your application. But just before we close, I'll mention a couple of other potential ways that we can support you over the next 10 days. That's a whistle-stop tour of the NGFP. So back to you, Daniel, for the foresight piece.
Great, thank you. And Katie, as you see people coming in, if you could just add them in the room.
Of course, yeah.
I keep getting notifications. I get like distracted.
Yeah, no, I've got it. Don't worry.
Great. So thank you for that, Katie. So I just want to spend a few moments just talking about the foresight within the NGFP context, give you a little bit of an idea of what we're looking for, and walk you through examples through our fellows, people in our community. And Eddie, as I mentioned before, as a judge, feel free to chime in at any point if you want to add or underline a few things. So for today, I want to keep it very high level. And I really want to think about, for those of you, considering applying, to really consider that for us, we're really looking to see the way you're creating impact and engaging with your community. So, that means, how are you reaching out to your community? How are they involved or empowered? What's your theory of change? And within that, we're looking at ways we weave in futures and foresight into that. And for us, at the most high level, the key points are, are you helping people, your community, explore different ways about thinking about the future? Not thinking about one way of the future might unfold or forecasting or predicting, but helping them explore different possibilities of what the future could look like. And are these possibilities of what the future could look like, is it coming from the community, from their insights? And this insights can be quantitative, for example, by talking to people who are studying climate change, changes in the sea level, changes in the weather, all the way to qualitative changes you see in your community, good or bad, and thinking about how to respond to that, or even on thinking about the future in terms of reflecting on your past. Maybe it's rooted on indigenous cultures or traditional cultures, and how that can be reinterpreted or resurface in the future, or how we can make that more alive, or support that in the future or in your community today. Now, based on that, there's a lot, based on this sort of what we're looking for, it can apply to many different types of projects and activities. So I want to walk you through that. First example I want to show is from Amala and Shristi. And these, by the way, are all people who are fellows and part of the NGFP community. For these two, they wanted to say, what, when we talk about the future of food, a lot of times it comes from a very Western perspective about Western foods or Western way of thinking about food. We want to think about the future of food from local traditions, from thinking from where our community is. So they talk to restaurants, chefs, nutritionists, and of course their family and general community members to say, what are ways that we can think about the food as also belonging, these traditional foods that has been with us for centuries, as also belonging to the future. So they came up with what they called a cookbook, which had different stories about what that future could look like. Some contained recipes about rethinking about traditional foods in a way that were healthier or more sustainable. Others were, hey, when we think about vending machines, it's always as a tool that brings in Western foods, Western companies, or Western style foods into our community. How might the vending machine instead support traditional foods? So instead of a vending machine having potato chips and chocolate candy bars, what about the vending machine only has traditional foods in a way that supports our traditions, our culture, and values? Another person, his name is Adam Sharp, part of our community as well, was looking at how some societies are rapidly aging. So, for example, in Western Europe, or even in many parts of Asia, like China, China, Thailand, Japan, they're facing a society that's changing very rapidly because of aging society. So for him, instead of stories, he wanted to do a card game where people can play around with different ideas, with policymakers, with NGOs, and of course with the community of what the future could look like. What are the changes in policy? What are the changes in culture? And what kind of technology could help support these sort of changes? So for him, exploring the future with his community was about play and being open-minded and open-ended of the different possibilities. Then we have Yuri, who comes from a very different perspective, and for him was looking in the continent of Europe about how rising sea levels or changing sea levels would change communities. So for him, he developed a digital platform, an online platform, to bring together climate experts, people who are thinking about the different ways coastal communities can change from sea level or heat, temperature, etc., and connect them with people in the community, people who actually live in those places, policymakers, decision makers actually from those places, and to say, okay, if this type of environmental changes happen based on what the experts are saying, what are the possible ways we can react to that or change how we act to think about what our community looks like to be more resilient or to adapt to these changes. So what you have here are three very different ways about thinking about the future or different subject areas, but there's a common theme, right? Whether it's thinking about food through storytelling, thinking about changing population through a card game, or thinking about the way a community might change based on sea level changes, all three have a very common theme. And they're around helping actively, I'm sorry about a typo there, but helping the community come together and think about the different ways the future might unfold. Having the communities think about that based on their own insights, based on what the changes they're seeing, changes they would like to see, and of course, changes they would like to avoid from happening. And in these three cases, the fellows weren't creating that future and saying, here's an image, here's the way the future will happen, and giving it to the community or participants, but really intentional about bringing people together based on a certain theme, like food, like climate change, or the elderly, and asking people from their own experiences and insights what the future could look like in a very systematic way, whether it's playing with cards or storytelling. So I hope that gives you in some insights about the ways about the way futures and foresights are used in these different types of projects. And you can see, there are very different examples out there. So, and Katie talked about more about, multi-species living and other ways about thinking about how we use futures and foresight to engage with the community and the issues the community are facing. So with that, I know that's a lot that I just talked about. I want to just actually give a little bit time to reflect on what we just shared. If you start having questions, please add them to the chat and we'll get to those. But I want to go to kind of a brief reflection about this. I would love for you to just think about what we just shared with you, the three different examples, the 3 points that we said we're focused on, which is helping people think about differently about the future in different ways, engaging the community to do so, and using their insight to do so. So based on these 3 points and 3 examples, you think about your application and spend the next 5 minutes reflecting upon this with 3 questions. Are a variety of different features being explored in your application? Who is involved in imagining these different features in your application? And are these features based on insights from your community, or it comes from other sources? So just want you to have to think about that. I'm going to set a time for 5 minutes. We'll think about that slowly by yourself. Be free to turn off your video if that's more comfortable for you to think about that. We'll take 5 minutes, and then we'll come together again, and then we'll have collect your questions, and we'll do an open sharing with Katie, Eddie, and I to answer your questions. Hope that makes sense. So thank you, and let's start reflecting. Little music, tone.
Okay, Daniel, I think that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you all. Thank you for your announcement, Katie. Hope that was helpful to just give you a bit moment of what we just shared. And thank you for all your questions coming in. I see some of you have direct messaged me. And I'll get those questions to Katie and Eddie as well, since they're part of the team helping answering questions for today. I do want to just take a moment just to see if you've, one of the things that's important for us is also to understand how helpful parts of these sessions are and where you're at in terms of how you're thinking about the application. So I also want to share just based a quick check-in question. If based on what you've reflected right now, it would be good for us to get a rough view of where you're at with your application or what you think your application may need a few changes, but in the right direction. Maybe you still feel confident, but you have some more specific questions, or maybe there's certain things you like to rethink and reconsider based on what we just talked about. So just take a moment, just a multiple choice. There's no wrong answer. It's more for us to understand, there's about 50 of you in the room. And it's hard for us to ask each of you how you're feeling or see your faces. So, sometimes these types of check-in surveys help a lot in understanding where you're at. So feel free to answer, use the QR code on your phone, or I just shared the link on the chat. Thank you. Okay, so I think everyone has a code. With that said, I will move over to open session. So I just hope this reflection exercise and those examples are very helpful for you to help more think clearly or different ways about your applications. So we don't want to lose the remaining time for the three of us to answer any kind of questions you may have. I've been talking and not reading everyone's question. I'm hoping maybe Katie gives there a few.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
As well as, questions we should start with.
Yeah, of course, I've captured them from the top. So I'll ask the question of you guys. Perhaps that's the best way to go. So one of the first questions I noted was, I joined a few minutes late, so I may have missed this. Are insights supposed to originate from the community itself, or can one use the fellowships to research a proposed hypothesis?
So I think I can attempt that. One is that because the projects we look at are more likely to look at the community impact and impact in the community, we would prefer that we can be able to listen to outcomes or voices from the community of what they desire to see as their future. And so while the project and the fellowship itself can help you to influence or shape your direction, but we would prefer that the outcomes and the project itself is community-centered. So insights and voices from the community, and especially in also centering the voices of diversity of voices, plurality of voices will be very important. Also looking at the projects that do not foster inequality or amplify the inequalities or the power imbalances, but actually which provide some level of collective effort to address those systemic issues or systemic inequalities will be very good. So you might find a project is looking at food security, but I'll be interested very much to see food security and how it impacts, single mothers, children, orphans, neglected community, people who are coming either from prison communities. Those are the new voices we are looking to see how they bring about, because they also are very big stake in the project and in the very alternative futures we are trying to create. So yes, you can use the ideas from the fellowship, but let's also hear voices from the community in your application. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Eddie. Daniel, do you have anything to add, or shall I move on to another question?
No, that's an excellent answer. Let's move on.
Yeah, that's great, Eddie. Thank you. Okay. Hi, I have two potential projects, one of which would essentially be a futures and foresight research project on the topic of peace building, which I would write up in a long thesis. Would this project be appropriate for the fellowship? My other project is more local impact oriented.
So I'll be interested in knowing whether at what stage of your thesis writing you will be submitting, because if it is now at a time when you've gone to the community, you've collected data, you've actually been able to interact with the community, and you have some level of evidence, narratives, interviews, maybe some ethnography, that will form a very good a set of data to be able to put in the application. However, we have to note that the style of presentation will be different from an academic thesis. So we are looking at community voices. We're looking at, the totality of what the community aspires to go to and the futures they're looking at. And so your style will be different from how you present it in your academic submission. And the second phase is that now with the community itself, perhaps now you want now to look at what is the future that you intend to prescribe and what is the evidence supporting that. So in an academic argument, you use a lot of theories and work that other scholars have done. In this application, we want to see what is actually happening, and we'll be able to look at the evidence you're providing from the community relationships you've had, partnerships, collaborations. This is not your project. It is a community project. So you are a facilitator at the center. You're bringing various voices and various relationships and various stakeholders, various partnerships together to realize this. So I hope that you'll be able to use, yes, the academic part of your evidence just to create and provide us the gap analysis that is in the community and the proposed methodology. But when it comes to the main project, let us look at what the community is actually doing to actually help themselves move towards that alternative future that you are proposing. I hope that answers it.
Yeah, that's great, Eddie. Thank you so much. Okay, next question. Okay, I would like to ask in regard to who we want to work with. How specific should we be when answering the question on the application? For example, if the project is in the early conception phase, and while we know the big picture idea of the type of community we want to work with, the exact location has yet to be determined.
Well, I think it will be good for us to situate, because the application is in two parts. The first part asks you, what are you doing currently? Where have you made any application towards the use of foresight? Correct. So that is what is in the first part. The second part is, what do you want to do if given the opportunity, with the award? So your potential project. So yes, your potential project, you might actually say the current project is actually situated in this community, but we want to expand to this other new geography. It is okay to say we want to expand to this new project and to this new geography, or to these new customers or clients or whatever it is. And with the resource that we will be able to have, we'll be able to move towards this. We do not want you to give us specifics at that moment. However, just demonstrate the direction you're going and provide some level of evidence of community relationships, partnerships, collaborations, institutional participation that are actually helping to see that there is a collective behind your idea. So yes, you may not necessarily have all the specifics as per your application, but we can see your flight of direction, and that still counts.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Also, somebody asked about the previous recordings, and as of today, we have all previous recordings from the Q&A 1, Q&A 2, and we did 3 thematic workshops, all available on our website. So I'll put that link in the chat now, and people can save it to download. And this recording will be available as well afterwards. Okay, really good questions just come in, actually. I'll jump to this. Are we expected to finish the project by the end of 1 year? This will influence the scope of my project and my application. Daniel, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, I don't think we've had any requirements for that. I mean, one of the things that we work with if you're accepted as a fellow, we would have mentors and we have a program to work with you of what is practical or feasible in terms of what milestones to hit each quarter or each year, etc. So I would not limit in that aspect, but I think it'd be kind of clear what steps are taking at least within the first year and how NGFP can support you in that. So I think it's more about a clear linkage between, in a year, this is where I'd like to be. These are the elements where I think NGFP community could be helping supporting my work. This point was much more clear. And we've had projects where, we actually come back and ask, like, okay, we understand the first year, but what happens after that? So we're definitely open-minded to longer multi-year projects.
Great, thank you. There's a couple of questions. I'm going to try and group them together. This is specifically about community. So Eddie, this might be for you. One question says, is there any special category of community members we can engage or any community group? And another question is, can my application involve communities I have not actively engaged before, but there is a plan to engage them?
Yes. So one of the things is that we will hope that you can define for us what community means to you, because we are not there yet. So please define for us in this application, community means X, Y, Z. And then we'll be able now to use that as a reference to evaluate the application. And number two, yes, you can be able to say the current project I'm working on has demonstrated a lot of support and evidence that futures approach or foresight approach can work. I want to experiment in this new community that I've not been able to work with, but I feel that there is potential. So you need to create for us a bridge, a justification as to why this new community you've not worked with before will also work with this kind of approach. And from there on, as long as there is evidence and you can be able to demonstrate to us how the successes can be replicable or scalable, that will work. There is no problem.
Okay, great. A couple of questions here around sector as well. So one person asked, I'm running a youth mental health promotion and advocacy project. Is it relevant to the fellowship? And then I have a poverty reduction related project. I'm finding it difficult to select an appropriate category. So perhaps shed some light around sector.
Yes, I would be very much interested in knowing, what is the future of mental health, and which young people are you working with? Perfect kind of project, in this context we are talking about, moving from VUCA to BANI, and the weight of, mental work and mental health work. So perfectly, it can work. It can work whether it's a geographical space or it's actually specific to a cohort, a demographic, for example, the elderly. It can be to young people, for example, it can be in a workspace, for example, So that project works very well. It can fit in a number of categories that you'd want to look at. Poverty eradication, again, I would like to just get to understand, how do you define poverty eradication? We have different schools of thought and what works in your community. So what does poverty eradication mean for your community or where you are? And what kind of project do you want to now approach it? It can be an energy aspect. Last year we had an applicant who is actually talking about the issue of using charcoal briquettes in the space of firewood to address household poverty issues that actually come with firewood cooking. And they were looking at a project on looking at charcoal briquettes. It can work. It can work at an environment level. It can work at a community level. It can work in terms of the energy sector. So all these are diversities. We'd just like you to explain to us, what does poverty reduction mean for you, and how does your project envisage to address that from a futures perspective? It can work.
Great. Yeah, and I think difficult to select the category. I think with the global challenge categories, if your work doesn't align, that's fine. There's the general category is the sort of traditional route that people have taken, and the 7 global challenges we've introduced this year. If there's not a direct link or it doesn't feel like it fits, then that's fine. It doesn't need to fit one of those. Okay, let's have another question. So for the video submission, Daniel, this might be for you. Is it supposed to be a produced video or is it an interview style? Oh, actually, Eddie, maybe you can help actually. Is it an interview style video sufficient? I'm definitely a foresight practitioner, but definitely not the best videographer, video editor, unfortunately. So any advice for the video? And there's just one video this year, Eddie, as well.
What I've seen in the past is there are people who actually just use their phone, just like a Zoom call, and you're talking to your grandma, you're talking to your friend, and just record. But it will be good to have some maybe written down, just script of like, this is a summary of my project. This is what I've worked on. This is a summary of my project, and this is the outcome that actually will come out of it. And you can just self-record. And the assumption is either you're working, you're talking to a friend or talking to someone, and you can record yourself even on Zoom or on Skype or in any device. The other one, I've seen people who have done it. If they're in a community of maybe doing the project with other people, one person just records it, even with the phone, it's still acceptable. We are not looking at high-end productions, Hollywood style with lights and everything. Just try as much as possible. But the good thing with video is you can do several takes so that you don't have to, like, at the first one that you do, actually that is the first one that actually goes. You can do several takes and then send what is actually a bit clearer in terms of audio. We're not so much looking at the beauty of the face, but just audio so that we can listen to you and you can make a case. The shorter, the better.
Great, thank you. Another one linked to video. During my preparation for my video application, I was a bit confused about the question, what is innovative about your project? Please, may you clarify or explain what is innovative?
Well, innovative means that how does your application stand against others which are coming? We are receiving, thousands and plus applications. So how does it stand out and compete, number one? But also, how does it explain your situation uniquely? And so that we can be able to appreciate the uniqueness of your application. So that is, for me, where the innovativeness comes in. Either that innovativeness of how you're applying futures of foresight, or how the current problem or the existing problem or challenge in your community could actually be solved by the use of foresight approaches. And you can actually demonstrate why other approaches have failed, and so why this one is going to actually provide an evidence that it could possibly work. We're also not just looking at permanent cures of problems as such. We're not looking at full solutions, and we are looking at potential for scalability, for replicability, and that's where now your innovativeness counts. Maybe Danny can add anything on that.
No, I think it's well said. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. So, okay, is there a preference for what type of relationship our references may have with us? For example, I noticed it could be an advisor, supervisor, or colleague. I have some colleagues who have greater insight into my foresight work based on their close work with me through projects, but would the reference of a manager be preferable to the judges?
Not necessarily. We are open to listen to any person who has worked with you or collaborated with you, and they can actually demonstrate and just vouch for your project. Any voice that can come, it doesn't need necessarily to be senior, as it were. We are looking at maybe voices from the community where you've worked with and there is a level of impact. It could be a local administrator who has seen your work. It could be a local school head or a local health person who has seen the work you're doing, and they can actually be able to vouch for you. And you can actually include that in terms of just some snippets in terms of what other voices have come in to actually augment the work you're doing. So the reference element does not necessarily mean seniority. It just means another voice that can actually vouch for your project.
Great, thank you. Now, someone's asked, how do I make use of futures and foresight within my project?
I think Danny can cover that. He's talked about it a bit earlier.
Right. So I think in the examples that we show, right, is we're using futures as a way to help people think about different possibilities, to think about decisions they can make today that impact their community, right? So so really it's kind of like, to use more from a business term, it's almost like from business world, you say this is a strategy question. From, I think, other places, this is a question of expanding people's imagination of what's possible. So helping people when you're dealing with a social issue or a topic area, is future and foresight is really a kind of a mechanism or an approach for people to expand, to think about and expand their imagination of what's possible, both on things of changes that's happening that have potential negative impacts or positive, or visions, different visions of what you like, what participants like to see from the future. Now, there are specific tools, of course, within foresight, and the example from Adam I showed is using games is one, using storytelling is another. There are also a lot more quantified ways of doing this as well. So really, it's like versus a traditional project is not completely different in terms of its goal. It's still about social impact. It's just using the future, the idea of the future as a mechanism, as a play space to think of different possibilities. I hope that answers your question. Now, of course, there's a lot of different tools, and and you can Google around and search for that. And if you go to SWOF, actually, SWOF, the main organization behind NGFP, we've published several toolkits as well about this. But we're very open in terms of the approaches, methods, and tools you use to imagine these different futures.
I'm just going to share the SWOF toolkit in the chat. Okay.
But yes, don't feel like you need to use it, just as a reference that, there are different ways of thinking about the future.
Yeah, great. Okay. So this is from a little while ago. So these questions are so helpful because they made me realize I possibly need to involve a wider community than I originally anticipated. And the examples make it clear that we should work towards something more tangible than a report or thesis, that we're looking for hands-on artifacts from the future that help us imagine better. I'm wondering how much I need to know or decide before I apply, and how much should emerge from the futures explorations I would run, in my case with the digital design community in the public sector.
I think, oh, go ahead, Eddie, sorry.
Yeah, I think what I'll just say before Danny can chime in on this is we're not looking at the entirety of foresight expertise, as it were. We are just looking at a particular case study and actually a demonstration or an application of a foresight methodology or approach that actually can be able to demonstrate that we could see this problem or case study differently and perhaps move the community to addressing those kind of situations. So in your context, you'll actually be able to look at, how does this public sector problems or case study revolve, and what is the complexity? What is the community losing or the public losing in this context, and why a foresight approach would actually provide, a solution, an alternative, a better way, and it can actually be able to either save resources, or allow better governance, allow better, delivery of public service, whichever way you're looking at. Danny, what can you add?
Yeah, I just want to have one clarification. I mean, we're not expecting you to go all the way to create an artifact. Something for so the future of food is one example where there's a story creating an artifact based on that story. But there's also folks like Adam who created a card game, and his first card game was not as pretty as what I just showed you. So I'm showing you the polished version as a result of being a fellow, and building connections for him to create a very nice looking card. His first version was just, a simple note card and writing on it. So, I'm giving you the more polished look at what it looks like, but, we well understand it's a journey. So kind of what Eddie mentioned before, we're looking for a direction of travel. We're looking for understanding that you're thinking about these different things. We're not looking for a finished project per se, right? And a part of it is us trying to help you finish that project. So please keep that in mind and don't be too hard on yourself. It's like, oh, this one has a graphic designer building things out. Please don't worry about that.
Great answers. Okay. Not got that many questions left, I don't think. Let me just check. Quite a broad question here. What are the benefits of your community, collaboration and mentorship? How can I make, oh yeah, nobody will answer that. So what are the benefits of your community, collaboration and mentorship? Maybe we can speak to mentorship, Eddie.
Yeah, I think the most important is the mentorship program allows us to the fellows to actually go through a specific set of conversations with other mentors. It could be actually help them to shape their career. It can actually help them to shift, for example, in terms of their career. There are people who are looking at maybe applying foresight more in their career, and they're looking at how to demonstrate that. Currently, I'm mentoring someone who is actually coming from a banking sector, and they're looking at going back into enterprise and becoming an entrepreneur, and they're looking at how can they use foresight approach in terms of helping them set their new project and business, having come from a banking sector, corporate sector. And so we've been having conversations over time and looking at just their context and how best they can be able to use foresight as a differentiator. So other mentors are taking different opportunities in terms of giving you ideas, advice, learning materials, for example. They can expose you to events and activities that are happening within the broader foresight community. So at that moment, what happens is that there is a pairing and then there's a conversation and just managing of expectations. But ideally, it just adds, an extra, asset in your portfolio in terms of growing and being grounded in foresight tools. I hope that answers it.
I think we can add a bit more to that, right, Katie, in terms of beyond mentoring?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think you can speak to it more than I can.
The mentor relationship. I don't know. I feel like having someone to support you through, like, have regular touch points through the fellowship, and I think it links into the wider offering of having access to the NGFP practice team who've been through this for a number of years, but also to the fellows within your cohort and the wider network, and having monthly opportunities to be able to talk about your project to a different audience. So therefore looking at different things that could be a gap, different areas where there's space for progression. Essentially, we just want to support you to make the most out of your idea and out of your project. And so having different people that can help with that. And I think as well, in terms of part of this question was, let me just find the right document. The benefits of the community. And I think that really ties in here as well, because you're essentially having an opportunity to be part of something where people are, it's global and the projects are so diverse, but everybody is learning about futures and foresight and using it in different ways. And I think that dialogue and having access to that is something that people feel very supported by as well, and inspired over the course of the year and then beyond. People stay in touch with us for years after they finish, which I think is perhaps testament to how they feel associated with the NGFP network and feel part of something. There's one more question here about, I'm conscious of time, we've just got a few minutes left, but one more question about numbers, which is interesting. So how many people are we competing with, i.e. how many applicants do you anticipate? I can take that one. So at the moment, we've got about 800 people that have an open application with us. So at the moment, there's 800 open applications. I suppose it depends. Yeah, hopefully as many people as possible get those finished in the next 10 days, because we are in the countdown now. But that's where we're at numbers wise at the moment. Then every year we bring on 20 to 30 fellows, but also invite people to join our wider NGFP network. So people that are eligible and meet the criteria, we invite to be part of the wider NGFP network. And then one final question I've got here is, for someone entirely new to foresight, but with a passion to develop myself in this field, how can I convince the judges in my application on how I will use foresight in my proposed project?
There are two approaches to that. One, you don't necessarily have to be a full-fledged expert in foresight work, but you can actually demonstrate that part of the fund and the application will help you to ground yourself in foresight methodology. So there will be a learning element to it. Last year we had, an applicant who applied and said, part of it, I'll be able to grow my expertise in, learning foresight. So there is also a component of that. And the second one is also the opportunity perhaps to consider, do you have any person you can be able to bring on board who has maybe an understanding of foresight work, who can also collaborate and share, for example, that skill in your project, as you can handle the other element of, community work, community involvement, or whatever you're doing. So we're not saying that you have to be the be all and end all. We are saying there is opportunity for collaboration, but also there's opportunity for learning. And that's why you can actually say that part of it in terms of being in the fellowship is to get a mentor who can help you to actually, rev up your foresight skills. And that's totally okay.
And kind of add to what Eddie said, I mean, we're definitely not looking just for people who are experts. Indeed, like I think a good number of people are just beginning their journey. So that's why, for this session just now, I would just focus on the very high level concepts, right? So if these concepts, you can show that you're applying that in your project, you're already halfway there in terms of understanding futures and foresight, because those are the critical mindset shifts that is all about what foresight is about. And one of the responsibilities I have is actually working with the network. So we have about almost 600 people now, is helping them supporting them on their learning journey to learn different areas of futures and foresight that support their work. So we definitely see this as a learning journey. We think, we're looking for people who are early in their careers, early in their understanding of futures and foresight. So, please don't consider that as a barrier. If anything, we are looking for folks who are just starting their journey.
Okay, final minute, Daniel. I think we should probably wrap up, and I've put the fellowship email address in the chat so people can email us directly after this session with questions that haven't been answered, or if they want further clarification, or just for additional support if you need it with completing your application. And I'll send you a link to the recordings, and then Daniel, back to you to just close us out, if that's all right. Oh, you're on mute, I think, Daniel.
Sorry. No, thank you for that, Katie. So, right. I know there's a lot of us and we only have an hour. So I hope you find, this short session helpful and impactful, with particular examples, with key points. And as Katie said, there will be a recording of this if you missed anything. And you can also always follow up with us again via email to help you in your application. Our point is to have you be successfully apply, and we're looking to expand the whole universe of people who are using futures and foresight in their work. So we definitely welcome that. Yeah, thank you, and thank you for attending our final Q&A session.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Eddie. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day, morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.